All right, so today we are gathering with Rachel Lindsay, who you may originally know from when she was The Bachelorette, but now she hosts a fantastic podcast about Bravo called Morally Corrupt, which releases multiple episodes a week in the Ringer reality TV podcast feed. Rachel is one of the best interviewers out there and moderated 3 different panels at BravoCon this past weekend: a one-on-one Ask Andy with Andy Cohen, a highly talked about Real Housewives of Potomac panel, and one with a bunch of OGs like Kyle and Vicky and Teresa. Rachel's here today to look back at the 3-day event, analyze some of the goings on, share some takeaways. Thanks for being here, Rachel. We both talked about before we started recording that we are both kind of still nursing BravoCon hangovers. How are you?
I am so good. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. And if they can't tell before, you can tell from my voice that, yes, we are still recovering from what was a beautiful blur of
Yes.
BravoCon. And I have to tell you this too. Going into BravoCon, I wasn't as excited for some reason. I was like, oh, it's Vegas. How is this going to be? The logistics of it all. And as soon as I stepped my 2 feet into BravoCon, it was like the spirit took over
The
and I was
spirit.
ready.
Absolutely. No, I'm with you. There was a big question mark for me in terms of like,
Right.
is it going to feel too big? Is it going to feel too Vegas? Is it going to miss some of that New York energy? But like it felt seamless. There was like it was like simultaneously calm, but also so exciting, and it was a
Yes,
very well planned event. I would say right off the bat. Like
absolutely.
yeah, like
I
compared
think
to
it was
Javits
better.
last year. Oh my God.
Yes. I think
Yes.
it was better than New York, dare I say. There are rumors it won't be in Vegas next year, but time will tell.
My guess is LA. My guess is they make their way west even more. That's
That
my
would be nice.
yes, totally. Okay, so first of all, and I say this as somebody who has moderated at past BravoCons, your panels that I went to were the best moderated panels I've ever been to at any BravoCon.
Thank you.
I've talked to other people who said the same thing, that you just are so good at it, especially that I loved your Ask Andy. I thought it was because I had gone to the one the day before, which had a very different
Yes.
vibe with Jeff Lewis. Um, how do you feel coming out of, I mean, 3 panels is a lot to juggle in a weekend like that.
It is. Thank you so much for saying
Yeah.
that because you're your own worst critic and you just don't know. And I'm a fan too, so I want to do a good job for everyone. It's 3 panels to answer your question is a lot because I'm trying to participate in BravoCon and work BravoCon at the same
Yeah.
time. So it was, as you can tell from my voice, but it was so much fun. So
Yeah.
much fun. I was probably most nervous about Potomac because if you attended the panel, you can tell that there's a lot of tension with the women. And so I just didn't want to say the wrong thing or ask the wrong question where it would just unravel into something bigger than that. And then I would lose control, which is a moderator's worst fear.
Right. Right. So
So
what was the prep like for that? Because the kind of vibe I got from most of the panels was that like it was the instruction was sort of like stick to these questions, like especially because the chaos will come for the fan questions anyway. But I feel like with Potomac, like what you're saying, if there's this inherent kind of like heightened tension already with the cast, it's like a de facto reunion of sorts, even though we're early in the season, but you can't ask about certain topics that may be contributing to that
right.
tension. So is that what's the kind of prep like for something like that? And or specifically for this one?
The most prep that I received from the producers was for Potomac.
Yeah.
You have your meetings before, you get your questions, you ask, can I go here? Can I go there? And the beautiful thing is there's a Q&A at the end of everything. So they're like, if you don't ask, the audience will. Such a smart audience, I have
Yeah.
to say. They ask such good questions. So, you try to keep it light and keep it moving, conversational. For Potomac, there were certain topics I could not talk about. Like there were certain husbands' names I couldn't mention or
Hmm.
ex-husbands. There's a lawsuit going on. So it was like that, those were certain things that I couldn't touch. But the cast wasn't aware of that. So it was like if there was a marriage question where I was like, and we don't bring it back.
Right,
We're not
right,
gonna talk
totally.
about we're not gonna talk
Right.
about marriages. Um, but with Potomac, the reason I was nervous is because I knew that there was I wouldn't be able to ask my question and keep moving. There was going to be a lot of shade. There were going to be reads. There was going to be a back and forth. And it did. Like for a second, I thought this is going to go off the rails, but yeah. But other than that, the prep is very,
Right.
because they want you to stay in a certain box.
With Potomac, do you sense that the divide is really deep seated and we'll go like the Jersey route, or do you sense that because I've always said about Potomac is that they can have their issues, but always come back from them. But I feel like as we've gone on, it's gotten a little bit more intense in that capacity. What's your sense like just kind of having that front row?
I do not see a resolution with the ladies of Potomac. And it's a really good question because I do see it going the Jersey route, which I think as fans of Jersey as well, you're like, as an audience member, we can't keep having these same arguments.
Right.
Somebody's got to go. You either have to have a resolution or you have to go. Somebody has to, if not both. And I'm really afraid because Potomac has had such a long-standing cast. The OGs that have been there from the beginning are still there. There's 4 of them.
Wild.
I think there's 4.
Yeah, there's 4.
Yeah, and they always seem, to your point, if they argue, they come back to each other. What they're arguing about is so real that I just don't think that they're going to be able to come back from this, sadly. And I don't know who would go because everybody is such a key part to making this season work or this franchise work.
Totally. No, it's like, it's disappointing because I want them all to be there and I love all of them. But I don't want it to get to the Jersey point where we have to have 2 panels. And even then there's still like really shady fan moments that happen. Kind of going off that, what is your, obviously we said that the fans are the ones who can really get the tea for us because they ask those questions, and it seems like there's somebody at the mic that sort of like asks you what your question is before you ask it, but like you can still go up to that mic and ask whatever you want. Anything. What is your mentality around that specific fan interaction that people have when they're at the mic with the cast on a panel? Because sometimes it's super respectful. Like you said, they're asking smart questions, they're asking the good questions. But we ended the weekend on this like really kind of ugly note with a fan who asked Teresa and Jennifer a question, and it went really off the rails. I don't know if you've seen that, but like,
did not see this.
So it's the part 2 Jersey panel, the last panel of the entire weekend. I was sitting there, and this woman in head to toe sent it to Daryl on merch, gets up there, and she goes to Jennifer Aiden, "What's it like being so far up Teresa's ass?" Oh. And she said that's exactly what she said. And then Jennifer gets up, starts yelling, calls the fan walks away, and Jennifer goes, "Come back here, big boy. First of all, it was a woman, and second of all, like there was some body shaming aspects to that." Then she hands it off to Teresa, who gets up, and they start yelling back and forth with one another. And the audience members flipping them off. It was a whole thing, but basically I'm circling back around to like the fact that like, I wanted to know your opinion on that, because I think it gets into like the booing of it all. And because BravoCon is this up close and personal experience. That's why we come to it to have these interactions, but they can cross a line. So what's your mentality around all of that?
I'm still recovering from the big boy comment.
I know. I'll send you a link to the video after.
Jeez. I mean, I hope that it doesn't get to the point where they really monitor the questions that people ask, because it is so exciting. It does go off the rails. The audience loves it. It's that exclusive experience that you get, that intimate experience that really makes BravoCon what it is. I was at the Beverly Hills panel.
So did I, yeah.
And there was a guy who went to the microphone and said, "Kyle, when are you going to stop making Teddy happen?" He called her fetch. He goes, "Stop forcing her on us." And Kyle's response was amazing.
I agree.
She was quick with it, but I mean, the audience roared. And I'm like,
she's answered that question before.
That was a moment that, even though it was such a rude question, it just gets the audience riled up. And it's what some people may have been thinking. I will say for Potomac, they told me that they were going to monitor the questions. I don't know if you noticed, but instead of there being 2 microphones, there was just 1.
Oh.
Monitored in ways that, because they didn't want things to go off the rails. Yet there was a question, and maybe to your point, she told the producer one thing and it got up to the mic and said something different. But she specifically said, "Whose marriage do you see signs in that are going to fail? And maybe did you see those same things with Mia and Gordon?" And that opened up the door. And that's when I was like, we're not going to talk about people's marriages. And even that was something Candace was like, and I was like, okay. I was like, I'm sorry, we got to move on from this.
Totally. Well, the same thing happened at Southern Charm, because it was like they weren't really talking that much about the Taylor Austin Olivia stuff too much because they were saving it for the reunion, it seemed. But then a fan's question opened it up and Austin couldn't help himself and him and Taylor got a little bit into it. But then it was like, I don't know. You need a little bit of that though. I understand not. I understand not doing the full thing on the panel because that you want to save it for a good reunion special. But I don't know. I agree. The fan question needs to stay.
I will say that I thought the panels were a little bit more tamed this year than last year. Last year, they were going back and forth with each other. They were giving all this exclusive information. And I was just like a kid in a candy store. So it seems like they tried to rein the Bravolebrities in. And I think that makes it a little bit more boring. I appreciated the fan questions because they were stirring the pot. I was asking such light questions, I felt like, because they want to save it for the reunion or save it for the premiere. And yes, you got that with Southern Charm. You really got that with Summer House.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw, it was such a boring panel.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't talk about Lindsay and Carl.
Yeah, and also they got it out of the way at the very top when it was sort of like, why? I don't even think they should start off with that. I think they should butter everybody up a little bit and then get into that. But yeah, that was not an awkward panel. It never really jumped. Like it.
Yeah.
It was, and I don't think that was their fault. BravoCon. Yeah, that was my first one was the Jeff Lewis Ask Andy on the first day, and. For people who have not seen that or heard about that, he basically went off on Crystal Kung-Minkoff, said she shouldn't be on the show. He said a comment about Kyle. Then it kicked off this whole feud with him and Crystal that weekend. What was your reaction to that whole situation? Because it kind of felt to me like just classic Jeff Lewis, but I don't know.
Yes. And I think at this point, if you're coming to BravoCon, you are familiar with Jeff Lewis. That is his brand. That's his persona. He came to perform, not to truly ask Andy questions. I didn't watch it, but I'm sure at the end of it, he was probably like, and make sure you tune in every day on Sirius XM, I heard that he, as a moderator, they gave you questions. I heard that they were like, here are your note cards. And he was like, I don't need those. I have my own questions.
Stop.
And Jeff Lewis can get away with that.
Right.
I could not. I'm trying to be asked back to
Right.
I thought the Crystal thing was low.
I thought so too.
There's a line of funny and just outright use Crystal's word bitchy, And so I just felt like, you're funny, Jeff. You don't need to do that. That just wasn't a moment. It's not a moment to pick on them because, as Crystal said, what Jeff does, and he even does this with Kyle, he'll say something rude and then he'll text them and be like, hey, sorry about that. Like everybody's just supposed to let it roll off their back. And it's like, no, you rile an audience up to spew hate and dislike toward me. And that's not okay. And he's got to learn the line between the two. But people were upset at Crystal's comments too.
They were upset. And I personally, as a gay man, I didn't find she called him a cocksucker. She used her word again. And called him bitchy. And I personally didn't think it was homophobic. I thought she was using it in the way of he's just an asshole. He's just it wasn't I know the word implies certain things, but I feel like she was using it in a different way. Did you think that what she said was problematic?
So because I'm not in the queer community, I feel like I don't have a dog in the fight. Okay. So if you're offended by it, I'm like, then we're offended.
Right.
And
right.
If you're not, you're not. I've actually heard it split though. A lot of people told me that they weren't offended by it, but equally, it got a lot of media attention where there were people who.
Yeah, and Jeff said I think Jeff said he wasn't offended by it. So if he's not, then it's sort of maybe we move on from that. Rachel, going into the weekend, I feel like my biggest question was, obviously how much the Vanity Fair, the Bethany Reality Reckoning, the Ramona firing, how much any of that was going to overshadow what was going on, which is supposed to be a really fun, engaging, fan-driven weekend. Personally, from my experience, I didn't think that it felt like a huge elephant in the room. I felt like it didn't feel like it was overshadowing a lot of it. People were asked about Ramona, they either said no comment or sort of brushed it off. I feel like the one time it was mostly an elephant in the room was during the OG Roni panel when it was sort of when she was supposed to be there and she was in the trailer for the show. What did you pick up on anything, or did you feel like it overshadowed any portions of the weekend?
No, I knew it would come up when I was talking to Andy.
Yeah.
Because I think people think Andy is all powerful and he makes all the decisions, but we know he doesn't.
Yeah.
Influential, but doesn't make all the decisions. So there was a Ramona question that came up, and I felt like he handled it well. And I think that this was really great on Bravo's behalf. If Ramona had been there, it really would have overshadowed BravoCon. But because they made that quick decision, she's uninvited, then it's like there was really nowhere to go. And even Andy said it. Bravo made a decision. She's not here. I think that speaks for itself. Now, there was a rumor, okay, that she was in town. I don't know if you heard this. Did you hear this?
No, but I know that Avery was at BravoCon.
Avery was there. I kept joking. I was like, Ramona said, "You will man that booth,
right?"
And you will.
and I think that she stayed at what would have been Ramona's hotel room. But I don't. For sure. Was Ramona there? Was there any evidence of that?
I was told that she was supposed to be a guest at Heather McDonald's show.
Oh, on Saturday night.
Exclusive information. I was told that. And I was like, well, I'm not going to go to Heather's show if that's the case. Like, I can't be caught supporting Ramona, right. But she didn't show up. But the rumor was that, and I heard from a good source, was supposed, and I don't know if she chickened out. I don't know if maybe she was her guest before it all came out. But yeah, I thought, so to answer your question, I didn't feel like it overshadowed that much because honestly, I didn't think the article was that big of a bombshell.
I agree.
We had been told that this article was coming and we knew it was going to drop the week of BravoCon. And then when it came, I'm like, don't we already know this? The same people talking.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I thought Andy put it well. It felt like a rehash of old stories or retelling of old stories. And
yeah,
you know, in on one hand, I'm like, okay, it resulted in Ramona facing consequences for her actions finally, but on the other, it felt like it was mostly information that we had heard before. So
right.
Yeah. Right. And I also think that it's sort of like Bethany's aim, it seems, is to take down the whole thing. And like everybody who's at BravoCon is probably inherently going to be on the other side of that equation of of wanting to protect what's going on. And so I'm glad we didn't feel that too much. Honestly, I really do.
And I was instructed to not do, like, I had the Day One Divas panel, so I was instructed to like not ask questions that
down that route.
That would make someone mention Ramona.
Right.
So they really tried to steer away from it.
So I want to talk about another person who potentially could have been a guest, Teddy. She was kind of like a common denominator almost every single day of BravoCon, to be honest. Her and Tamara threw that 2 teas in a pod party the night before on Thursday night. A bunch of housewives. A bunch of housewives were in their hotel room, like hanging out with them Thursday night. Teddy was interviewing a bunch of them throughout the weekend for the podcast. She called herself Teddy Walters. Kyle was asked that question by a fan, and then there was the Vicky Teddy squash that beef situation on Watch What Happens Live. She's such a divisive, polarizing figure in the Bravo community, and for her to still kind of be there and sticking it out and like kind of taking some of that heat. In some ways, you kind of have to respect that she just like is going to keep trudging along. But were any of those things that you really cared about or like were paying attention to, or are you kind of like not on that boat?
Teddy is interesting to me because and I didn't even realize she was a common denominator, but you're right, she was. And she's interesting to me because on screen, she was on the season, they didn't like her because they felt she was boring. She didn't have a personality.
Yeah.
Then we see her on 2 teas in a pod, and she's messy and just really goes there and is always like dropping tea or, information she's heard. And she is so well liked by all the housewives.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Vicky was the exception, but for the most part, they love her. They have her back. And so I think that she's a really interesting position in this Bravo world because she has the support of the housewives, not the fans. So she gets to keep being around. She really should thank Tamara and Kyle because Kyle, has her back, still invites her to stuff when they're filming. Tamara, people love Tamara, like she's polarizing. And now they have this super successful podcast. And so Teddy, it's like, we don't even need her back on the show. She's still such a point of conversation because she's always dropping mess.
Right.
And so we have to talk about her. So she's genius in what she's doing. She knows
I agree.
And she wants us to talk about it.
I kind of think that it's Tamara who's pushing her on us, not Kyle. You know what I mean? Like,
It's not Kyle anymore.
No, because Kyle brings her on for like a cameo once a season for like 5 minutes, and then but it's Tamra of it all that's really, I think, and we saw. I mean, Tamra did like 3 squash that beefs in a row in the Watch What Happens live taping that I went to. Tamra is like, it's just an interesting position because you said the housewives love her, the fans don't really love her. I can't really tell what the network thinks about her. You know, it's kind of hard to pick up on how they really feel about her. But it's kind of they have a lot of power as podcasters. They do.
They do. Well, I think we know how the network feels about her because she's not a housewife again, and she wants to be. I don't care. I don't even know if she's been asked this question, but Teddi wants to be a housewife. Like,
right.
Bad. So she would jump cities to be a housewife. And I mean, I hear there's recasting for OC. And
didn't she just rent out her house or something?
Yeah. So maybe that, but that would be too much. Like, what makes their pod great is one's in and one's out.
Totally.
We don't need both of them.
I think if they're both in, it actually almost becomes like an advantage for them in a way that they're allowed to talk like it and also still be on the show, you know, and the other women aren't really allowed to. I've noticed something in both the panels that I went to of yours, that you are a huge advocate for Vicky to come back. You're a Vicky girl. Would you want her to join OC again full time?
It just doesn't make any sense to me at this point why we don't have Vicky. Last year, I advocated for Vicky when I had her on a panel, and the audience was chanting for her.
Yeah,
my panel was at the same time as Beverly Hills, and which was wild last year. And I thought no one would come. People were coming because they were so excited to see Vicky. On Watch What Happens Live, when I was on there, that's when Andy was like, oh, she is going to be a friend of. A panel, the audience goes wild for Vicky. This season alone, she was doing so much good work. Vicky is a quintessential housewife. She has all the ingredients that make them great. And she was giving it to us as a friend of. I just don't understand the decision behind, maybe one, pause for a second, but I just don't understand the decision of not bringing her back.
Right. Maybe she can be more of like an Adriana in Miami friend of, where you're essentially like you're there for everything to stir up mess, but you just maybe don't have like. But the thing is, Vicky does have compelling personal storylines too happening in her life, so it's not like she doesn't like Adriana. I think it's more just because her personal life isn't that compelling or engaging right now, but like Vicky's is.
Exactly. I want, and she gave us an update on her life on the panel, and I'm like, I want to know more about Vicky. And the thing that's beautiful about Vicky too, because she is the OG, she doesn't care about hurting your feelings.
Yes.
And she doesn't do it in like a Jeff Lewis way. It's just kind of like, respect me. I've been here the longest. You just got here. There's a hierarchy here. And I love that she keeps that energy without even being on the show.
Totally.
And the Lifetime Achievement Award is not going to help. Oh my God.
Totally. She demands respect, and people give it to her, and you have to respect that. Yeah. So, okay. What if we imagine for a second OC next season with Vicky and Teddi on the cast? How does that work?
Are they cool now or no? Did they squash their beef?
No. Oh my God. No.
Okay.
It was Teddi walked off the stage because Vicky went back to her seat and refused to engage after she made that cancer comment. Yeah, no, they're not good. But I'm just like, if there's rumors about Teddi and Vicky coming, I don't know. It puts Tamra in a tough spot. I don't know. The whole thing is just.
It does put Tamra, but that's what'll make it so good.
Oh my God, amazing. That would break. I think that would break ratings records. If we
absolutely. Like, I'm not a fan of Shannon Bedore, but I still want her on the show.
Of course,
I saw her in a bathroom, and I was like triggered because I was like, I do not like her at all as a housewife.
And Miss Shannon is tiny these days. Yeah, she was. Yeah, totally. Okay, so I mean that actually segs into what I want to talk about next, which is just like any behind the scenes little moments that you've observed or experienced. What stands out in your mind? Because I'm sure there are a million that both of us had.
Okay, so the person that I really wanted to see in person was Jessel, and I did. And I was so excited to see her. Brynn was next to her, and I didn't even like acknowledge Brynn and get to say hello because I was like, oh, it's Jessel. So that was fun because I was like, I didn't see everybody. There's so many people I didn't see, but I did see her. what was interesting was we found the holy grail. That's what we kept calling it, of Bravolebrities. Behind this, like all the stages, there was a room of tables. And honestly, anybody probably could have gotten that.
Right.
And that's where it was the holding spot for all the Bravo people before they went on
They
their
would convene
stage.
there, right?
And when you walk in, it's like the cafeteria.
Oh,
Everybody's at their table. Like you saw, there's Southern Charm folks over here. There's Married to Medicine over here. And there was slight interaction, but there wasn't. And as I walk in, I'm obviously not a part of anybody's show. It's like, well, where do I sit? Do I
you're
sit
holding
over
your
here?
holding your
Do I
lunch
sit-
tray.
Yeah, I was like, I'm so nervous. I feel like nobody wants me to sit with them. So I found a spot in the back of the room, in the very back, where I wasn't talking to anybody. That was kind of cool because that's probably where I saw the most people,
Yeah,
was
totally.
in the cafeteria. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that
When you were in
I'm sure.
when you were in that room, did you notice any like a cast member not sitting with their cast or any mixing that was interesting?
Well, I will no, not there, but I went to eat at the Four Seasons, like it's now I can say, which is where they had the
Yeah.
Housewives. So that was also interesting.
Oh
The
yeah.
Housewives got the Four Seasons, and everybody else was
The
at,
Delano. Yeah. The
yes,
Delano. Yeah.
which was great. That's where I was
Yeah,
too. It
very
was a very
nice.
nice hotel, but it was just interesting
Yeah,
how
I heard that too.
there's a hierarchy in Bravo world.
Yeah.
But I went to eat after the second day. This was after the New York panel. And Sai was not sitting with the rest of the women, and neither was Uba. So it was like Jessel, Aaron,
Their
Bren,
husbands.
their husbands, but the other two, I was, oh my gosh, it seems like they were all friends, but maybe they're not. And then I was like, we started talking, and it's like, no, they've probably been around each other all
Totally.
day.
They're
And they're like,
coworkers
I
that
want
need
to
a
be with
break.
my guests. Yeah, they were with their guests. But at first, it was interesting because it was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
there really is tension in New York. But no, I think that they just wanted to
Totally.
break, and I can't blame
Totally. Oh my God. Yeah. I was in the press room for most of Friday, Saturday, just sort of because they just had people coming in, just like it was like a conveyor belt of Bravolebrities doing
Yeah.
press lines. And it's interesting seeing how certain people react in that realm, because some of them get pulled off halfway down the press line because they have something to go to, or they just don't want to be there anymore. It's taking too long. Some of them get mad that they are starting at the other end of the press line. So it's like broadcast on one end, digital
Oh,
and print
really?
on. Yes. Yeah. Like I noticed two people who were going off actually for like 10 minutes about it. They're not housewives, but two people on another Bravo show. It's just, you notice things like that because it's
Yeah.
part of this whole game is how they like what level of ego they have and what kind of treatment they think they should be receiving. You know what I mean? They see how other
Yeah.
people are being treated. And so that was where I was observing a lot of things.
It's hard. And tell me if you agree or disagree. If I'm a Bravo celebrity at BravoCon, it's kind of hard not to have an ego.
Oh my God. Yeah.
The way we were walking out the talent entrance, that's where they had the cars come, and they were holding up the line because they said fans were jumping the fence on top of cars.
It's the Beatles.
What is happening here? But it is interesting too. I was on an elevator with some Southern hospitality, and they were complaining about how they weren't getting invited to certain of the nighttime things. Like they couldn't get. So it's interesting that sometimes Bravo's like, no, we're not giving you, you're lucky to be here.
Totally.
You're not getting all the extras. And then you see clicks. Like I saw the video of Vanderpump people with Heather Gay and Bren and, certain people. It really is high school. And I probably felt the worst, not Teddy. I felt the worst for the Southern hospitality folks, because when they took over the Southern Charm panel, everyone was like, what is this?
Right.
Why? I even was like, what? Give them their own thing. Like, let them do it. It doesn't have to be on the main stage, but give them an opportunity to shine. You're setting them up for failure. Nobody clapped for them, to the point where one of the guys goes, hey guys, clap for us too. I felt They were like this,
Yeah.
like the outcast kind
Yeah.
of Bravo, and I felt bad for them.
It's almost like they should have done one that was like, it could have been like a combo of like Southern Hospitality and Martha's Vineyard cast. Just like the first
Yeah.
season shows the young people who like don't need a big room full of people, you know. But I agree that was
It was tough.
The air kind, and it was like right after like one of the like kind of dramatic exchanges. I think too. It was like it was a hard pivot. It was
Yes.
a hard pivot.
Yes. They probably were like, get out there, go,
Literally.
go, go.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I observed back, I think one of the things that I was most notable, you know, we know that Salt Lake City didn't have a panel because they are filming their reunion later this month. But everything that I was hearing was that it's everyone and Monica. Monica did press alone. Monica was seated differently at the Bravos, Watch What Happens Live. It's all signs point towards her being like an extreme outcast on this cast, which is tough because it would be hard for her to come back for another season if the reunion doesn't go well for her. But I'm like, to me, she's a star. To me, she is a really great housewife. And for her to be ostracized would be a big shame, because I think that she deserves, she's earned, I think she's already earned like a spot back. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I didn't know that about that she wasn't with the rest of the women. And that makes me happy that we didn't get a panel of them, because where we are right now, and I haven't seen the latest episode of Salt Lake City, but where we are right now, she and Heather seem to be close.
Right.
And Heather does seem like a person who gets along with everyone, but we know from the trailers that something wild happens on a trip. And based on what you're saying, I'm like, okay, somehow Monica's in it.
I think so too.
Somehow.
I think so too.
Which makes me so excited for this.
Yeah, that's all I'll say, but I think so too. Did you attend any of the BravoCon live tapings?
I didn't. I was such a pooper. I got so tired by the end of the day. That's what was wearing me out, being a fan and moderating.
Right. Oh my God.
By the time I had dinner, I was like, I can't function. Yeah. I can't function anymore. So I hate that I missed them, but I'm going to try to catch what I can on Peacock. Are they all on Peacock? Yeah,
they're all on Peacock. They're heaven. The after shows are like 20 minutes long. It's very fun to watch. I went to the reading room one. It was the last taping of the whole weekend, and that was like all the shadiest women. It's just delicious. And I'll tee this up is one of the kind of points was like Lisa Milan was on the end from Dubai, and everyone, like, somebody had said, like, I don't know who that is, like, yada yada yada, and then or Sheree, I think, and then Lisa was asked a question, and it's who on the stage is most likely to have fake designer clothing.
Stop.
She says Sheree, and then Sheree goes, "This is a McQueen," and then right away Lisa goes, "More like McSheen." And the crowd went wild. She earned her spot on that stage. And actually, at a commercial break, Kenya went up to her and like whispered something in her ear. She must have been giving her flowers or something for that, because it was a top-notch moment.
I love it. I like Lisa, and I did not get to talk to any of the Dubai women.
Yeah, I saw Ayan, but that's it.
So I would have loved to have seen Ayan. I'm actually disappointed I didn't get to see her. But I didn't go to the premiere of the episode. Did you?
No, I didn't.
I heard it's good. I heard there's drama with Lisa and Chanel, which we know they had such a good friendship. So, I've been very vocal about they needed to change up this season and do more. I want it to continue. Not season, but franchise. I want it to continue, but I thought it needed some changes. And it sounds like they made changes.
I hope so. Because also I stopped into their panel for like the last 30 minutes, and it was like very empty, but they were competing with Southern Charm, which had so many. Southern Charm was packed to the brim, so they were competing, and it's a really popular show. But I hope it's great. I love some of that cast. So
Atlanta was empty too. Did you go to Atlanta?
I didn't go to Atlanta because it was a packed press day, so I couldn't really make it to a lot of panels that day. Well, I think what's interesting, because it's like Atlanta had probably their worst season ever, like I think interest is unfortunately at a low for them, and Drew wasn't there. She was conspicuously absent. I don't know what happened there. She was on the press email that I got last week. So
I saw Ralph last night. This is such good timing. I saw Ralph.
Okay.
And I've been dying to talk to somebody.
Oh my God, spill.
I was like, and the person with me was like, is that Ralph? And I go, oh my gosh, I got to get a picture for my Bravo girls. And then it was just too obvious. I was backstage at a Kirk Franklin concert. Well, it wasn't just Kirk Franklin, it was like a gospel concert. And
Iconic.
he was there. He looked like a lost puppy. I don't know if he was wanting somebody to notice him. He kept staring. And so I thought, oh, maybe he knows that I've like talked shit about him before. And then, but I was like, oh my God, it's Ralph in the flesh. So, anyways, that's just a little tidbit too.
Oh, I
he
love
wasn't
that.
doing anything crazy,
but I'm like,
he was there.
But I'm like with Atlanta, they're in this weird spot where like there's all these whispers about a reshuffle and what are they going to do for next season. I think that it makes the interest unfortunately low because I obviously love some of the Atlanta women or most of them, but I heard that also about Atlanta, which is unfortunate. And Roni apparently was like a line to get in, like so packed at the new Roni.
They had it on the smaller stage.
Yes.
I don't know what was going on the bigger stage, but we walked in 3 minutes late and people were on the floors up against the walls. They were having like the fire marshal move. People were telling people, get off the floor. It's a fire hazard. Wow. It was packed. And I didn't think it was that great of a panel.
No, I've heard it was fine.
They love Matt Rogers, but they're all like super friends. And so you could just tell they were just excited to be there.
Yeah. No, I think I want to end in these last 5 minutes, Rachel, is just to end with some big takeaways. And that is one of my takeaways, which is that the new both Ronis are extremely popular. We knew that the OGs were obviously going to be our fan favorites. People go crazy for them. But I was really heartened to see how popular Bryn and Uba and Aaron and Jessel and probably to a lesser extent Sai, but like the entire cast people were going crazy over them, and I love to see that.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit on Ask Andy, but I think everyone had low expectations coming in, and we know Jenna wasn't there, and I didn't expect her to come, but I was like, I'm going to watch it because I'm curious, but I don't think that these women can even, are even in the same realm as the OGs. And then they beautifully surprise us. And it was so interesting, and they're quirky in their own ways. And they all have individual storylines, which we see lacking in franchises, which is what makes them flop. So I'm like very captivated by these women, and I want more. And you don't always say that. So yes.
Yeah. And Bryn had the moment of the weekend with her high heels getting stuck in the escalator. So I mean, come on, it was instantly iconic.
It was instantly like the BravoCons are working in overtime.
Yes, 100%. And do you see what Jenna was at the CFDA Awards the other night or something? And
of course.
Do you see what she said about? Somebody was like, we weren't at BravoCon. She was like, oh, I had important things to do. And the woman goes like what? And she goes, twiddling my thumbs.
She's not coming back.
She's not coming back. There's no way. Which is disappointing, but she did it to put her name back out there.
Yeah, she put her name back out there. She was probably curious, something she'd never done before. And yeah, you got that from the reunion. There's no more twiddling her thumbs. Yeah, the shade.
Yeah. What's another big takeaway that you had from BravoCon?
I'm trying to think. I'll say this. The husbands were having the time of their life.
Yes.
And we were podcasting, and all of a sudden you could tell if you were in the Bravo Bazaar, the stars were all, and for those who don't know, that's where all these installations are, like the Sir back alley, the Sprinter van on Salt Lake City, which I just think is incredible. And then everyone has their booths where they're selling something. So you know that a Bravolebrity is coming through because you hear the screams or you see this tail of people traveling. And so we're podcasting, and I see this small tail of people gathering, and I go, oh my God, Jody Walker is on our podcast, is a huge Pavitt fan. And he's walking with Abe the Babe, and there are all these women, and
not
you
Abe
can
the Babe.
tell they're eating it up. And I think that's what's so fun to see, are that the husbands are like having the time of their life, just with like, you don't walk through the Bravo Bazaar unless
if you don't want the selfies. To be seen. Totally. Yeah, you want to be taking selfies.
There's a whole backstage.
Oh my God, I love it. Whole thing. Oh, totally.
And so Pavitt and Abe were taking pictures, smiling,
good for them,
engaging with the fans. So that was really cute to see the husbands do that thing.
Yeah. I think one thing that from the Potomac panel, which was packed, it was so it was so crowded in there. And I think that to me, and there were two, Giselle and Robin were on your OG panel, and I thought that,
Yes.
they've been established, they've been there, but there was something about this year to me of seeing they are just completely on the same level as any of the other more longer running franchises to me. Like they are there, they are extremely popular. They are some of the biggest stars there. And something about that really struck me this past weekend. And I loved to see it. Like I thought that it was really cool to see that.
About Potomac.
Yeah.
I will say, I agree with you on Potomac. It's the franchise. I love them all, but I'm like, they're consistent every single time. It's been 8 seasons. It doesn't even feel like it's been 8 seasons.
No.
They're just so good. But a big takeaway I have is Married to Medicine.
Mm-hmm.
I missed the panel, but Married to Medicine has been on for 10 years. And there was a fan in Ask Andy who was wearing a Jesus Jugs shirt, who I did meet later, who is lovely, by the way, lovely.
Love.
But she was asking a question, basically holding Andy's feet to the fire of why isn't Married to Medicine put up on the same level as some of these housewives? 10 seasons, you want to talk about consistently good? They do not miss. These women are doctors, married to doctors, whatever it may be. And they just are so dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously fans love them, but why aren't they treated? So that's my takeaway. Why aren't they treated like housewives? Why were they at the Delano and not at the Four Seasons? Why, the person who asked the question said Cecil said he wasn't invited to one of the parties. It's like, why are they treated like they don't kill it?
No,
every
I
single
totally
time?
agree. I binge Married to Medicine over the past 2.5 years, and I'm obsessed with it. I think it's one of the best, strongest casts on Bravo. Mm-hmm. But I think it's just the matter of the Housewives label. I think that in some ways, I think that's the moneymaker is that Real Housewives label that separates Married to Medicine from any of the other ones. But in a just world, they would have. Atlanta had a tough past season, but Married to Medicine didn't. Married to Medicine had a great last season, and they have the whole cast was there, and it's a really interesting point to make because I completely agree. And I don't know.
What if Atlanta becomes that? It could be Real Housewives of Medicine. It could be, the Atlanta version. It could they could rename it Real Housewives, the Married to Medicine edition.
No, totally,
and it would be fine. And let Atlanta take off and regroup.
I mean, Phaedra is on there, she's not dating a doctor anymore. They apparently already broke up. So they're there and they deliver the drama. Like there are such good stories going into this season. So I completely agree with that. I think my final takeaway, Rachel, is just that there are 2 upcoming reunions that I think are going to be blockbusters. I think it's Salt Lake City and I think Southern Charm. I think those are both going to be
absolutely
insane moments, because you could tell on the Southern Charm panel when Austin was trying to hold himself back, but he couldn't. He couldn't hold himself back, and he's like, "There's so much I want to say. There's so much I want to get off my chest." But they knew it was clear they were instructed not to go down that route because it's not the reunion, and they're filming that probably soon. That to me is going to be a huge moment because there's a lot of he said, she said that's going on. And I think there's a lot behind the scenes that they have not divulged yet.
I know. I was so Austin can't help himself. And it's the Olivia, Austin, and Taylor. And only thing I'll know, because I know we need to go.
Yeah.
It was something Vanita said that lets you know. And I think we saw it on a trailer that they showed us, like a mid-season trailer. She's like, she's not your friend to Olivia. And Vanita said something on the panel where she said, Taylor and I, it was our chance to get to know each other. But right now I'm here kind of on this side. I'm standing with Olivia. So I was like, oh, because I need Olivia to release herself from Taylor. So
I totally agree.
Oh, yeah. We're in such a good Bravo time.
It was so fun. I think Olivia's a huge star, by the way. I think Olivia has what it takes to be a great reality star.
I've changed my tune on her.
Okay, good.
I didn't feel that when she was dating Austin.
Right.
I felt like she was trying too hard to be on the show. And then there was the rumor that her parents paid for her to be on the show. I don't know if you heard that.
Oh, right. But I think I've seen her whisper about that. I also think that honestly, I think that Catherine being around last season kind of held her back. I think that she had some sort of
true.
I think that she she's been like opened up, and I think that it's only good things. Well, Rachel, this has been so much fun. I'm thank you for holding up with the voice. I know it's been tough for you.
Okay.
But we both need to get some sleep, I think, still after this BravoCon. It was such a fun weekend. I had such a fun time breaking it down with you.
Yes.
Plug more Morally Corrupt or anything else you want to plug before we sign off.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you so much for having me. Please let me come back anytime to talk about anything
Love.
Bravo. I would love to.
Whenever.
And I was so happy to meet you in
Yeah, we
person
got
as
some time
well.
together. Yes.
Yeah. You guys can check out if you want more Bravo news, because I could talk about this all day. Morally Corrupt. Episodes drop every single Friday. I also have another podcast, Higher Learning. Episodes drop every Tuesday and Friday. If you want a little housewife break and step into some current affairs, that's what we cover over there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Buy my books.
Yes. Rachel Lindsay, one of the best in the biz. Thank you so much for being here. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
I want to gab.